So right away, Kingdom Death Monster players, you disagree. And on the opposite side, Dark Soul players are like, Fritz, there's no comparison. There is no comparison. I'm committing heresy on both sides, but I've been asked this question, interestingly, both on my blog, because I've been pushing up some Dark Souls content and reviews, and I'm getting ready. To do a Kingdom Death Monster playthrough. And I think I'm going to live stream it. I've been looking at a better setup for that, where I can have the camera looking down on the table and we can make those decisions together. And not giving away any spoilers, I'm looking through some of the KDM expansions just to see, to try and figure out to incorporate them, because I want to do a little bit beyond core, but I'm trying to figure out what ones are going to work best or have the most dynamic appeal or have the ability to show up in the game if we're going to live stream it over the next month or two and pick a time to play it. It wouldn't make sense to incorporate an expansion because some of them, the stars need to align for it to appear. I want to make sure it does show up. So we've got this back and forth, and a couple of people were asking, enjoying both titles, what are the differences between the two? What's kind of the pros and cons? Because the core engine of both seem to be this idea that you play a group of adventurers, heroes, survivors, undead, whatever we want to call it, and you're going up against boss monsters. You're fighting boss monsters that have abilities, are controlled by an AI deck, have certain amounts of life, and you have these encounters. There's also this idea of powering up, leveling up, grinding up before you fight the monsters. I mean, in Dark Souls, you go through and explore the rooms, and then you fight a mini-boss, main boss, mega-boss. In KDM, Kingdom Death Monster, you have the hunt, and before the hunt, you have to craft items and figure out how you're going to equip your warband and how you're going to take your settlement. So both artistically and universe aside, we're looking at the experience, the core engine, they seem very, very similar. So the first thing that people throw up, price tag. Let's explore retail. I mean, sometimes you can find things on sale. You can do eBay. You can do a trade. I think there's more opportunity to get Dark Souls discounted because it's retail. KDM is very specialized by its nature. The KDM core box is $400. Now, is $400 is a lot, but this is the question that we ask in a lot of board games and miniature games and hobby games. Is it a lot for what you're getting in terms of the cardboard, the books, the miniatures? I mean, Kingdom Death Monster is not only the boss monsters, but also models for the survivors, armor kits for each of the survivors. So you have dozens of dozens. It's WYSIWYG. If you have your armor a certain way and you have a certain weapon, there's a miniature for it. So you essentially have a board game. Let's say most board games are jumping in at $100 these days. And miniature systems, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer, just they're hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You're getting a board game and a miniature system for $400. Now, the replayability and the exploration of Kingdom Death Monster is massive. So divide that 400 by a bunch of playtimes, solo, with a group, with friends. I don't think it's that bad if one can pull it off. Now, when we start adding expansions into KDM, they're anywhere from $70 to $100. And there's numerous expansions. They add a lot to the game. Core has tremendous value. But the expansions also add ways to explore, new gear, new cards. It's not just something to fight. It's a new story. It's new elements. Let's say we pick up 2 or 3 of the bigger and more dynamic expansions where you know they're going to be played. So maybe you're up to maybe up to like $600 or $700. I mean, that's significant, but that's kind of what we're looking at for a good mid-tier experience. Now we jump over to Dark Souls. And I love Dark Souls. I do. I love the game. I've actually got it set up right now, and I'm finishing up a Mega Boss run because I got to make room for Kingdom Death Monster on the gaming table. But I don't necessarily agree with the release, the way they've released the game. And what I mean by that is the core game, $100. but I've seen it. I think it's on Amazon right now for about 70 or 80. There are mini bosses. There are the main bosses. You have the 4 character classes, but it's crippled in that, yes, it's a playable experience. The replayability, it's missing some things. What you really need at a minimum to make Dark Souls shine would be the Invaders and Summons pack, the Adventurer pack. So Invaders and Summons give you Invaders and Summons to fight. They're like specialized NPC characters that are either going to attack you at random points or help you fight a mini boss or a main boss. For those of you outside of the Dark Souls kind of narrative, the Adventure Pack is going to add more core monsters because there's not enough in the main box. It's also going to dress things up with a little bit of 3D furniture for the chests and the barrels and the bonfire. So you need those 2 packs, and then you need the Adventurer Pack to give you some more character classes, because the 4 base character classes are interesting, but there's some gear and some playstyles that they just can't do. So it becomes very apparent, even when looking at the Kickstarter, that was supposed to be the core experience. These boxes put in the core, but they broke it out and decided to go like Fantasy Flight, 1 million expansions. So you're looking at maybe $100 and then $50 to $60 times 3 for these other expansions. The Adventure Pack, the Heroes, and the Invaders and Summons, plus core. Well, now we're kind of up in Kingdom Death Monster range, right? I mean, we're pushing up there. And now then we add on, I would say for the experience, you've got Darkroot, you've got the Iron Keep. Those are kind of other areas to explore. You're going to want to purchase those at some point because they're different parts of the game. And you're going to want at least 1 mega boss. I would say the mega boss is last because you got to go through a lot of gates to get to them. And I've actually pushed up to my archive in the board gaming playlist things to acquire for Dark Souls. My idea of the ultimate way to acquire the expansions. But the point is, the price tag of Kingdom Death Monster, when you look at this, it bugs you out. But then, wait, if you really want to go all in on Dark Souls, is it that far behind? So I'd say they're about even. Let's look at the play style. And again, the narrative of the gaming universe, we're going to leave those out because that's kind of subjective. You'd have to kind of enjoy it. We're looking at the experience. So obviously, if you are an amazing Dark Souls fanatic and you love Dark Souls, I don't have to sell you on the game at all. Not that I am. I'm just trying to share that experience. You're like, I'm already in. I was in on the Kickstarter. But if you're kind of on the fence between both of them and trying to explore and see, I'm hoping that this is helping a little bit. The fights themselves, Dark Souls does have a long play time. I mean, if you're looking from grinding the dungeon and then fighting the mini boss, grinding the dungeon, fighting the main boss, grinding the dungeon, fighting the mega boss, you're probably looking at about, honestly, realistically, 5 hours of play just to complete that. Maybe 6 hours. That's something that you could do with a group. It works amazing for solo, but 6 hours complete playtime from start to finish. You could stop at the mini boss. You could stop at the main boss. You don't have to go through to the mega boss, but that's the complete playthrough. Kingdom Death Monster is a campaign. It doesn't play one-off. So you're planning to play hours and hours, assuming your settlement doesn't burn out and get destroyed for various reasons. Let's say you are going to go from start to finish and you've got maybe 2 expansions in there. You're looking at 40, 50, 60 hours of playtime. So you can set that up on your table and play solo. Often what I do is I set it up. I'll play it for literally like a month or 2, get totally burned out. My mind just fused, put it back on the shelf for a bit, pull it back out. I mean, as a solo experience, it is immersive. It is amazing. It is. If you're playing with a group of friends, or that's going to be your primary mode of transmission, well, you can set it up. You can pack it away. The settlement is recorded. The sheets are recorded. There's slots for the cards. I mean, it is very well done. It's not just heap it all back in the box and spend 3 hours setting it up next time. But it is a game. It is very much a story type game. In addition to the hunt and in addition to the tactics, that is going to push its way out. Now let's talk about the grind and the acquisition of items and gear, war gear, because it's important. In Dark Souls, they're both kind of random in how they work. So in Dark Souls, you grind a dungeon room, and then you get souls. That's the currency. You spend these souls by going back to the bonfire and drawing cards, random cards. And the deck of item cards is massive. I have to say there's a massive amount of diversity in the core. And then as you add on the expansions, the pile of cards grow. These items are weapons, armor, gem upgrades, pieces of magical jewelry. And you can build quite an item set and get a lot of bonuses. But it's random. So you could be playing the Sorcerer. I usually play the Sorcerer in Dark Souls. And I spend my soul currency, and I'm like, I drew a greatsword. Well, what am I going to do with that? You can't, unless you're playing house rules, you can't trade that in, or you can't convert it. Like, you get what you get, and you see if you can utilize it. Kingdom Death Monster, there's no rooms to grind. If you successfully complete a hunt, you get resources. Literally body parts from the monster that you fight, and some of them are very, very exotic. There's also a chance in the hunt to, on the battlefield itself, the hunting ground, pick up pieces of ore or pick up rare plants in addition to fighting. So you've kind of got that going on, but you get these random resources. Now you can control the resources based on the monsters that you want to try to successfully hunt. But with those resources, then you go into a settlement phase where you build out your encampment. It's almost like a simulation game. What type of crafting pieces do you want to build, structures, and develop that out and upgrade your gear and build different types of item sets? I mean, it gets very, very complex. That's the difference between the two. Dark Souls plays very fast. Get some souls, draw some cards. Maybe you can use it. Maybe you won't. Go and grind it again. Kingdom Death Monster is like, okay, we just battled this monster for like an hour and a half. Now we're going to sit down as a group or solo. You're going to sit down and really, it's like Mage Knight, really crunch the resources and see, what do we want to build? Where do we want to go? What's the plan on the survivors? So incorporating that aspect of the game, the boss fights, the monster fights. So the AI in Dark Souls, it's good. It's interesting. It's streamlined. It plays very fast. You have a deck of cards that tells the mini boss or the main boss how to attack, how to move. You draw the cards. They move out and fight. The life goes down on the monster. It heats up. It gets all raged up. You add in some new cards and you play. Much like the game, the pattern of cards until the heat up stays the same. So my memory is just totally shot. Too many war games, too many games. I can't remember anything, and I'm not going to cheat and write it down. But in theory, if your memory was good enough, you could, much like the video game, memorize the pattern of attacks and know, like, okay, the fourth card is coming up. This is where the gargoyle is going to lunge with the polearm, so I'm going to get out of that arc. It does it, it moves out, and you attack. And the boss fights themselves are structured in that way. They mirror the video game. But they just kind of act. They're programmed. It's a random program. It changes. They act, and you fight it out. Now, the interesting side, not giving away any spoilers, the miniatures in Dark Souls, the bosses and the mega bosses and all that, they fight how they look. So if you're going in for the first couple of times, or you're returning to the game months later and you forgot what everybody does, like myself, you can look, what type of weapon are they holding? What are the attributes? Like, one of the mini bosses has a spiked tail. It's going to utilize that as a tail whip, so I probably want to stay out of that rear arc. The visuals are tied in. The visuals are tied in very, very well. When we get to Kingdom Death Monster, the AI is amazing. I mean, the AI, it feels like, it honestly feels like one of those chessboards where the chess pieces move themselves and you're playing like someone remote on the other side of the world. It feels like the monster, you're flipping the cards and you're doing the AI, but it feels like the monsters are alive with how they act. And the first couple of times I was playing it solo, I literally felt like, it's like someone in the next room. controlling this monster. It's like some remote intelligence controlling this monster. It's interesting because naturally the AI is a lot more complex. I mean, Dark Souls was trying to be like the video game, and it does, and it works, and it will catch you by surprise. But the AI in Kingdom of Death Monster is reactive in that the card is going to tell you what the monster is going to do, and it's going to act out based on what it looks like and its powers. But there's also a chance for reaction and critical hits, that the monster goes after specific targets or it acts a certain way. I mean, you do kind of memorize what they do, and the deck gets built randomly depending on the level of the hunt. So you're not going to see all the cards every single time. And then, of course, there's combinations of cards. But it's scary. It really is. It's very, very interesting with how it plays out. The last kind of comparison, both games are insanely hard. They are. They're meant to be. Dark Souls because, well, it's Dark Souls. Kingdom of Death Monster, you're in this nightmare horror world. Yes. So difficult, and it's not difficulty level like Mage Knight, where there's a lot of pieces, and I love Mage Knight, and you're kind of figuring things out. But once you unlock the combos and you understand the rules, it's an enjoyable game. But okay, I'm in way over my head, or the probabilities of this happening, yes or no. Kingdom of Death Monster and Dark Souls are both just really, really up there in the difficulty. Dark Souls, you get killed, you go back to the bonfire. You don't lose your gear. You don't lose anything. You go back to the bonfire, spark dial goes down. Depending on the number of players, you run out of sparks, you lose the game. So it's not, death isn't as bad. Kingdom Death Monster, there's this duality, and you have to understand you're playing the settlement. Yes, there's a narrative. Yes, there's a campaign. But the game is to make it to the end of the Lantern Years, to make it to the end. You're going to lose survivors along the way. And what hurts is your survivors level up in that they gain experience, they gain proficiencies, they gain fighting talents. I had Alfarius was my last character that I was playing, and just he had some amazing fighting abilities, and essentially he's like an unarmed fighting monk, and he had some great speed, he had some good armor. I'm literally running around like tiger uppercutting everything in the game, and I got mauled by one of the monsters and just crippled. There's a chart you roll on. You get crippled, and now he can't fight. He's done. And I felt very sad face, even knowing the game. So there's this investment, almost like a Dungeons & Dragons investment, where you're investing in your survivor. But they get killed, they get mauled, they get maimed, they get just all over the place. Insanity, they go insane, their mind just explodes and shreds. I mean, the horrors of the game are very, very real. As you lose survivors, new ones come out of the settlement. So death happens in, well, I guess Dark Souls, you're already dead, so you're coming back again. But death in Kingdom of Death Monster happens so much, so easy. But you have to be understanding that it's going to happen, and you're going to lose some very powerful characters. You're going to lose some characters that you really love, that you've been going through 3, 4, 5, 6 gaming sessions. It's the nature of the game. It takes a little bit of time to get over that. So what to buy in? In my mind, of course, you have to weigh cost versus space versus time versus playability. Both have their strengths and merits. Dark Souls, I play Dark Souls when I want to get some Dark Souls in, the narrative, but I play it when it's like, I want to get some boss fights, I want to get some items, I want to get some stuff in a compact, single-play, solo gaming session. Dark Souls plays quicker, plays faster, delivers those things well enough for the franchise and well enough for what it does. It's manageable. Kingdom of Death Monster, the level of detail is extreme. And it's the type of thing that it is going to take over your life, and it's the type of thing that it is going to warrant play. You don't just set it up and run one hunt. I mean, you could do a Lantern Year, but it's more like we're going to play this as a campaign to the end, and it's very, very immersive. And you do have to be ready. Sometimes you'll have a settlement where you'll make it to like Lantern Year 8, 9, 10. Figure like 3 or 4. 2 to 3 hours per Lantern Year. you've already invested a lot and your settlement dies for various reasons, no spoilers. Now you got to start over. I mean, can you deal with that psychological edge? I mean, it does kind of push you psychologically to that. But both are very, very interesting gaming universes and gaming worlds. So I'm going to finish up this boss run, this mega boss run for Dark Souls. Then I'm going to clear out the table space, clear out the gaming table, set it up. I'm going to make sure we have enough room, pull down Kingdom Death Monster, work through some of the expansions to put in. We're going to set that up, and then I'm going to push up some live plays to my channel. And the idea is just to be like, have it ongoing. I'm not saying it's this time. I got to look at the calendar, but every Wednesday night for 3 hours, I'm just going to stream it. We're just going to sit down. We're going to play some KDM. Whoever's on can help me make decisions tactically for the hunt, tactically for the settlement. So this way I have deniability if it doesn't go very well. And as a group, whoever's online, we'll play it. And then next week we'll jump back in, and the week after we'll jump back in and just kind of push that out and play that out to kind of get the experience.